the most important piece of the revolution that's going on in transportation is in your pocket. Right? This. Those of you who lived through not having smartphones, do you ever remember picking up something in your pocket and saying, where are we? Maybe you would fold something out. But now you have a sense of where you are through a map on your phone. You are able to hail something through the phone. And the phone knows where you are. This is what's driving innovation, because I can show up in Manila, have my Uber account, and use it without having to set up locally. Or I can show up with Skip Hop in any city in the US or Europe and figure out how to use public transportation, which previous to that used to be very opaque. Which also says we should do something about that in the Philippines, because our public transportation is still very opaque, right? Unless you're a regular rider. Anthony Townsend, who is with the Rudin Center, in fact, wrote this report, and I strongly recommend it if you're thinking about innovations in space, called Reprogramming Mobility. And basically the premise is transportation agencies and cities are going to have to rethink how they do transportation and how they manage transportation. Because now it's going to be all about information and how to get information to people at the right time. What we're doing is we're moving away from the priority of the car and the logic of the car that has shaped cities since the 1920s, which still seems to be shaping Metro Manila. Right? Whenever people talk about our problem, it's traffic, it's traffic, it's traffic. The city can only expand so much road space. In fact, there is a concept in transportation planning called induced demand. The more road space you build, the more cars you invite, the more congestion you get. You cannot build your way to get more to get more throughput of cars through your system. So you have to figure out other ways to do it. We did a report 3 years ago, I'm going to say, to look at mode shares in 3 big cities in India, in Southeast Asia, and Mumbai. And I want you to notice something about the mode shares in these cities. Walking and cycling are still 64% in Delhi, 36% in Bangkok, 67% in Mumbai. Walking and cycling are also transportation, and we need innovations in that too. Right? Very often, particularly in this city, there's no respect for the pedestrian at all. Take a look at our sidewalks and the way we treat it. There's construction going on the side of EDSA, big new building going up. There's about 2 feet of sidewalk, and the construction scaffold falls on the side of the sidewalk, not on the road. For some reason, the road is very sacred and people are not. But we need to innovate around pedestrians. We also need to innovate around bikes, both e-bikes and the way we navigate across bikes. And there's a lot going on. Lastly, and I'm going to go through a few more slides. It's a report I wrote in 2013 on new mobility in cities, and it's about innovations in informal transportation. Many cities tend to imagine modern transportation systems as only mass rail, and we're going to get rid of all the tuk-tuks and the auto rickshaws and the tricycles and the pedicabs. Not going to happen. Because what we have as a city and other developing world cities like us is we have very dense transportation networks, which are great because 80% of the population in Metro Manila takes public transportation. Right? The problem is very different in the US, where public transportation is so bad that there are people who have to wait 2 hours for a bus. And where low-income families have to own 2 or 3 cars, because that's the only way they're going to get around. And which makes them very vulnerable to price fluctuations. So the thing that's driving a lot of this, and I'm going to skip that one, is that there's similar forms in our transportation. This is that auto rickshaw in India, which is very much the same as the kinds of auto rickshaws. They're called very different things in Bangladesh or in Bangkok or in Lagos. And it's the tricycle motor. Right? So there's a similarity in technology. And so this is the matatu, which is really the AUV, which is also called the trotro in some places and the Okada in some places. And it's about these mini vans that happen all across in cities. In fact, New York has dollar vans. They use a different kind of it's a Dodge van, but it basically behaves the same way. So all of these cities have similar transportation models, similarly trying to serve the same segments, right, their population. And the innovation comes from trying to figure out what is the value chain, right? So if you're thinking of innovation in this space, don't just think, what new app can I bring? And I'll give you two examples, right? There's a value chain about how we operate transportation, and the key ideas are when you slice that value chain and figure out how to do something differently. And I'm going to show you two. This one is called Fazilka Eco Cabs. They're cycle rickshaws, which means they're pedicabs, in a city, Fazilka, which is just outside Delhi. And what Fazilka did was, what you usually do with a pedicab is you hail it, you come out and you go to a corner and you hail the pedicab, and then you haggle with the pedicab or the cycle rickshaw and say, I want to go to this place. The guy pedals and then you pay. Well, this is India, it's the land of call centers. So what Fazilka did was, they innovated on two ends of the spectrum. They created new cycle rickshaws which were lighter, which meant that it was easier for the pedicab driver to pedal it. And they created a system for them to be able to borrow and pay over time for the cycle rickshaw. They also provided the cycle rickshaw drivers, if they signed up for Fazilka Eco Cabs, with health services and school services, so that there was a benefit to the driver. And then for the passengers, what they did was you could call or text a call center and say, I need to be picked up at this point. Rather than equipping the cycle drivers with their own cell phones, they reach out to the tea wala. That guy on the corner sitting down is a guy who sells tea at the corner. And he managed the queue. He would get a message, so if you texted Fazilka Eco Cabs, it would figure out where you were, which district you were, and then it would route that call or that message to the tea wala who had the phone that you were paying for. And the tea wala would say, okay, you're next, here's the address, and he would text it back, and you as a customer would get the name of the driver and what time it was arriving and the cost. So there was no haggling anymore, and there was safety because you knew who it was, right? So there's innovations in things like that. So here's another one, the Nairobi's Matatu network, which is basically what public transportation is. They're all minibuses. They didn't have a map. What they did was that the government kept giving franchises. There was no record of where these routes were. They were typewritten and they were somewhere, right? So a small group from University of Nairobi, University of Columbia, and MIT came together and said, let's develop a Matatu map using phones and GPS. And they created the first map of Matatu routes in Nairobi. The city, when they were doing the project, was against it, and then when they saw the map, they got also excited because they finally had the map. And in fact, they're using that to build a cashless payment system for Matatus. More so, it became the first informal transportation system that got incorporated to Google Maps. So if you're ever going to Nairobi and trying to figure out how to get anywhere, you can get on Google Maps and it'll tell you what Matatus to take at what corner. And then it'll help you get to where you are. So that's it. There's a lot of innovation going on, and it's really because this is a need. We need to get around. We need to get from point A to point B, and getting from point A to point B in a private car is just not going to cut it anymore. And that's what mobility is the ability to get around the city in my frame, as a person, as people, rather than as people riding huge vehicles. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Benji. I think that gave you a good overview over what is being done, where innovation can be placed, also here in the Philippines, put into perspective. Let's look at Impact Hub. I believe most of you have been here now or are here now for the first time. And this might be strange to you. This is a place with lots of graffitis on the walls and tables and chairs, and there's a large bar and some people working in the background. This is called co-working space. This is called event space, and this is called incubation place. And what we're doing here now in Manila is being done all over the world. So if you talk about innovation, we're the least innovative people here in the room, probably, because we just more or less copy what other people already have done all over the world. They started it 10 years ago in London, the first people just gathered together because they needed to get workspace together. By now, the day that we have now, is 73 impact hubs worldwide. It's 11,000 impact entrepreneurs, so people that care about planet, about profit, and about social issues also. So there is more than 11,000 people connected through places like that through a virtual platform that we use. So as I mentioned, we're working. All the desks that you're sitting at normally are just workspaces. You put up your laptop and you start working here. There's people working in the background, so that's kind of how it looks like in the day here normally. And at night we make events in order so you can profit and optimize the network that we have, because that's the real value. It's a local network that is very strong, and then there's a global network, as mentioned, of 11,000 people.